I'm sure you can tell that this is going to be a very special episode of ResiWeek, not just because I'm decked in festive colors, but because I am doing it and not Matt Scott, because he won't return my calls.
Oh, Fine! I'll just do it myself!
On this episode of ResiWeek, we reminisce about the biggest stories for the residential AV industry. All that and more on ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 513, The Best of 2025. Welcome to ResiWeek, your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential side of the AV industry. I am not your host, Matt Scott, but I am still here looking back not just at the last week, but all of 2025. A year that has been interesting, to put it nicely. It is also the year that we hit 500 episodes of this very show, so got a lot to cover. We start back in February at ResiWeek 480 talking about, well, tariffs. Kind of have to, because at the start of the year, it was what everyone was talking about. Every week, there was some big push and pull and confusion and concern about what could happen for tech verticals like our own with all these imposing tariffs. Matt got to dodge the question because it's a very US-centric topic, but that's okay because Tim was hosting that very episode. He talked to Katie McGregor-Bennett and Bob Archer about finding order in the chaos.
We've gotten so familiar and so used to working in a pretty chaotic environment. Supply chain wreaked havoc on our industry, both sides of the fence for years. COVID, all of the things. So, I think, unfortunately, I think it's just an extension of something that we're already very familiar with, which is uncertainty and needing to be really dynamic in the day-to-day. That's kind of no. Really, Katie? That's enlightening. What it really comes down to now is the time to have really clear communication. I come at this from a communicator standpoint. So now is the time to have very clear communication. And part of that is looking at shortening up timelines for things that you have certain criteria for, contractual criteria, warranty criteria, payment term criteria, those sort of things. You need to be taking a really close look at those. That's what's in your control, and start tightening up the language around those things to make sure that you're protected. And then obviously as the tariff conversation continues to evolve, is making sure that anything you're putting out there has that clarity and the short timeline that allow you to, save your proverbial butts. I think that's unfortunately what all of this is. There are brands are starting to make announcements. As we were talking about before we started recording, there's brands that have made the commitment to make an announcement, and now they're pulling those back. Right. And so, there's going to be a lot more of that and I think it's just going to be for the next really foreseeable future, but the next couple of months are going to be really bumpy in that regard. So, I think the challenge is going to be for systems designers, consultants, specifiers who have a little bit of a longer term and are looking at products and making interim buying decisions, not really knowing what the reality is of, are those products here? Are they landed? Are they in the US already? Or do they need to be inbound from somewhere else? And that, start dialing for products now, I think is the best thing I can offer on that side.
Yeah. Robert, you've been around for a minute, and obviously all three of us lived through the 2020. Katie mentioned the supply chain issues. What is going to be the longer term impact of these tariffs and of the different charges that the U.S. government's looking to put on?
Well, I think the impact that inflation has had on the economy over the past several years post-pandemic, it will probably have a similar effect where the prices come up and they're not likely to go back down. And that means that's more money out of consumers' pockets to spend on these systems. And that could impact the breadth of these systems. It could impact system design. Maybe it impacts dealers in the way that they order product and manage your inventories.
The other big topic this year was AI, artificial intelligence. But, if we really wanted to mince words, it was a bunch of machine learning that people just slapped the word AI onto, but tech that really didn't need it. That's not what we're exactly here to talk about. Instead, on episode 483, we talked to Ian Bryant and Joe Whitaker about ways to use AI that actually makes sense for your business.
When you're deploying them for the wrong, like I just the other day used it. Speaker manufacturers is a great way. I'll just share my secret with everyone. So you're trying to make a new speaker out of some plastics, and you're trying to figure out, you have a basic recipe for what is in the plastic, and then you're like, ooh, that one causes cancer. Ooh, that one off gases for plenum. Ooh, that, and then you stick that recipe in AI and say, make me this same recipe with full replacements for each one of these chemicals, and boom, it spits it out. And now it doesn't off gas, and now it doesn't burn your lungs. And yes, there is a place, there's a use for this, right? But the thing is we're going to burn out people on AI and give consumer fatigue because we're forcing it down their throats for the wrong thing. You've all seen the videos on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, where you can now have an AI assistant. No more receptionist, not a real person, right? We're going to burn consumers out to the point of they don't want AI. This is exactly what happened and is happening with Alexa and voice, right? We burnt them out by just letting them order Tide Pods and toilet paper from Alexa. So now we burnt them out on voice. Let's not repeat that and burn them out on AI too. It's useful. That's why voice is kind of in the stagnation. Even when big companies do that, and then you got great innovative companies like Josh AI going, okay, we better call ourselves a control system now because Amazon and Google burned everybody out on voice. We're going to do the same thing with AI. It's going to lose its luster. Once it loses its luster, you lose money for innovation. You lose money for development. That's why Alexa today is damn near the same it was on day one, right? Using it for a tool, yes. Using it for a salesman, an answering machine, a auto schedule generator. Guys, come on. Like, that's like Control 4 trying to have an app store. Didn't work, right? So it is what it is. I love AI. The use cases for consumers are just going to burn them out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ian, to me, this is just baby steps. Or is it, to Joe's point, of use it sparingly with customer facing? Is there a difference there?
Well, I first got to give a shout out to Henry Clifford, because this is another article that I remember we talked about his monologuing article a while back. And he's so great when it comes to the being personalization of our industry. And that's why I think it's important. Why I go side with Joe. And I think that we are, especially the more higher luxury that you get in our channel, this is a very personable industry. You are working very closely with people and trying to find solutions for them to improve their lives. And so having that vulnerability and showing that your mistakes and your writing and your speaking, and so that people know that you are a person that is trying to get to know them and talk to them and earn their trust and earn their business. That is what people want when they're trying to find someone to provide solutions for them inside of their home, which is their personal space. So for me, I think using AI for specific things like, hey, help me use AI to help you proof edit the letter that you're going to, or your email blast that you're going to send out. Use AI to help you find grammar mistakes, but don't use AI to generate the whole thing and send it out. Because I totally get it. I look at my emails. I don't care if it's what it is, if it's something that brand that I'm interested in. If I start reading it and it's totally auto-generated, it just turns me off. And I just think that that's something to keep in mind, especially in our industry. We are an industry that is about, making connections with your customer, and that's key. So I would, like I said, I would just use it as you guys said, as a tool to help you in your business and in your sales in other ways, but not to write letters to your customers or potential customers.
So let me just ask you guys this. I attribute AI kind of and use the example of like the auto attendant that first came into fashion, like really early 2000s, right? Where a small business could afford to buy a little 4-set, phone system and have an auto attendant. And as a small business, you're often never in the office. So the auto attendant was great, but then people got turned off by it, which again, the same principle applies here. And then you found out that to not have the auto attendant and to have somebody who could sit there and answer the phones all day meant that you had to hire somebody to do that. Fantastic. But it also meant that all of your customers' costs went up because you had to pay for this person versus this little bit of AI. again, to kind of put the two together. Is that kind of where we're at, where people want that personal connection, which means they have to be comfortable, and you as a business owner have to be comfortable with that investment in a person versus an AI?
As a consumer myself, I would personally pay more for a brand or a business that has the ability to allow me to call and talk to someone and have a conversation and work through something. I don't know. Maybe I'm old school, and maybe some people are fine with auto tunes. I hate chatbots online, and I hate knowing when I'm asking a question that it's just running through potential answers. And I just want to talk to someone, and if that means 10% more, fine, so be it.
So it's interesting that question. So there's two answers. Number one is I think a lot of the AI stuff that's being pushed out is to soften consumer awareness, to take away the fear of AI, what AI could really do. I do think that conspiracy theory is actually real. But the other side of that is early in the morning, I had a email come in from Brazil, or no, it was the UK actually, asking about our DSPs, right? And some of our DSPs, there's two profiles. There's one called P2 and there's one called P4. And he was like, well, I don't like, what's P2 and P4? And in a way that he could understand, I had to explain to him that P2 is P square, right? So that's when you're up against a wall, you're only giving, that many degrees. It affects the bass response of the speaker, et cetera. A 4 means you're in total open air. You're on a pole or on your post. It changes the bass head thresholds and the sensitivity of the frequencies. But because we have DSP, we can blah, 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 make magic happen. I actually typed that question into AI, and what actually got spit out, there's no chance he would have understood it. Like zero. So the point was, y'all made me think of it. The point was proven this morning because I was like, okay, I'd like our sales guys and our engineers to be able to regurgitate this, but they can't sound like me. They won't sound like me. So let me just see what kind of script and then it popped up and I'm like, nope, throw that away. I'll have to explain it to them and they can do it in their own fashion. But yeah, I want to talk to a person.
It wouldn't be a best of without some CanCon. That's short for Canadian content. And this joke would work really well if Matt were the one hosting it. So I had to explain the joke and ruin it. Canadian content in some stations require a certain percentage of Canadian content. And thankfully, we're following that rule because in ResiWeek 490, we talked about how the Canadian federal government ordered camera manufacturer Hikvision to close operations in its country. We talked to Bob Archer and Jeremy Glowacki about the impact of bans like this for integrators.
I would say on the surface, all it means is that all they could do in theory is service existing product in the field. I know here in the U.S., a lot of security companies, the manufacturers, they'll market the fact that their product line is approved for government use. Right. There's a whole certification process that they have to go through with all of that. Obviously, High K or High Vision, I don't know how to say it, but
it's always been High Vision to me.
they're not able to go through those same processes right now. So, who knows how it's going to impact them. I would think from the Canadian point of view, maybe they're trying to garner some goodwill with the U.S. to align themselves with their southern neighbors.
That's adorable that you think that. I love it.
It just seems it does seem so political, though. I mean, the timing is weird. That's what
It's so odd.
It's out of the blue.
It's like when did they suddenly get the intelligence that they needed to say this is a security threat that the U.S. had already determined, and I tend to want to defend. I feel like China can be a boogeyman for things, and a political pawn from a competitive standpoint, and whoever's in charge needs to use them in certain ways or not use them in certain ways. And you hear the human rights parts of this, and that
that was one of my questions. Was we've known that there are concerns with these manufacturers over privacy for forever. The human rights thing sort of gets sometimes mentioned, sometimes not. It is mentioned in the article, but when Jolly, one of our ministers, was talking about it, it was strictly a privacy thing. Do you think both of those are playing into this? Do you think this is just political? Do you think all of a sudden they're concerned about privacy of Canadians all of a sudden?
Yeah, I don't know what it's. The timing is so odd to me still, and I do truly believe that there are concerns, especially with AI, that the fact that it's been known that these cameras can monitor individuals across multiple places, whether they're connected at all or not, and that they can track individuals. And I don't know if suddenly they just had a wake-up call that this is a problem, a concern. I don't know why the difference in realization from one country to the other would occur. And you just look at the obvious, what's different, and it's this political climate. And I give Canada more credit than that, frankly, as you defend your country as well. I would say, it doesn't sound like Canada to do that, but it just, if it quacks like a duck kind of moment,
I was going to say, maybe the one thing that if you were to read into it, maybe the Canadian government caught China doing something and doesn't want to publicly accuse them.
That's the only thing I can think of, is that because again, it's very, and I'm aware that most of our listeners don't follow Canadian politics very much. I'm guessing that you guys don't spend a ton of time listening to it. I unfortunately do. And this is a rarity. We just don't see this kind of response, especially in the marketplace, right? We'll see it on the political side, but on the marketplace, in the business world, the last time they did something this, shall we say, aggressive, was when they arrested the daughter of Huawei's CEO, I believe, like 4 or 5 years ago. Like it's very random. One of the other news outlets is reporting that Best Buy, Home Depot, and Lowe's have already pulled Hikvision, which again, I question that a little bit because we no longer have Lowe's in Canada as of last year, but who knows?
Of course, one of the biggest events of the residential space is CEDIA Expo. Once again, cohabitating with Commercial Integrator Expo over in Denver. Unfortunately, I didn't make it out there, and neither did Matt, so he wouldn't have much to say on this. But Tim Albright did. He talked to Alex Capisolatro and Arlen Schwiger about their time at the show on episode 499.
I'm not even sure where to begin. It was, as you guys all know, if you've been to Expo, a lot of stuff. There was a ton of education, a ton of booths, a lot of people talking about AI, talking about lighting, talking about various AV things. I spent probably 90% of my time stuck in the Josh booth. So most of what I saw was what we're working on and hearing anecdotally from people about, what else is going on. But I did get to walk around. I got to do the Yellow Acoustics demo, which was pretty awesome, and a few other things. So I wish I could just say concisely what's going on, but I'll say the industry is strong. Companies seem to be growing. I know numbers might indicate that the show is either flat or maybe even down a little bit, but it didn't feel like it was weak. It definitely felt like a very busy trade show.
All right. I did pull some. We do not have numbers as of this recording, which is roughly 3:00 Eastern on Monday. Pulled up last year's numbers. Alex mentioned that 12,300 verified attendees last year. Again, as of this recording, we have no idea how many of those are compared to this year. Arlen, you had a change in the last year from the last time you hit CEDIA's show floor. A year ago, you were doing what I was doing, which was running around and interviewing folks. This time around, you've moved over to Rise. You're now representing companies and trying to get folks like me to come see them. But you got a little bit more of a taste than Alex did because, again, as he said, he was stuck in the booth. What did you see in and around the show floor this year?
Yeah, I would say I was, I wouldn't say I was stuck with my clients, but I was around our clients, which this year meant a lot of AV demos, which I guess it sounds like I saw more of than Alex, although I did not get to see the L Acoustics. But I think, for me, it was Ascendo, Mad VR Labs, Movia, and these are all brands that were associated with the SR7 booth at the show, the Soundroom 7, that $1 million home theater. So that was just something that was really kind of cool to see, and I think it lived up to. I think it lived up to the expectations. When you talk about a $1 million theater, you're putting a big spin on it. You're going for something that companies are not really used to it. I think we've seen demos kind of certainly tailed off in recent years as lighting and shades and energy management and other control stuff have come to the fore. But between Sony, between JBL Synthesis, between Soundroom 7, I was in Soundroom 6 a lot, a couple of the other sound rooms, and I was also around Richard Sharshan, who wrote the coffee table book Home Theaterology. And that was, again, it was partially about his love for home theater, but it also included a lot of educational content and inspirational content. From what he told me, business is going very well. We've got several projects lined up for this year. And so it really gave me a good indication that, dedicated home theaters, I think, are back to being, a very appealing sale for integrators. I think it's kind of going back to a little bit of their bread and butter, but their bread and butter is tastier these days, we should say, when it comes to audio and video. I mean, it's just kind of amazing, the Atmos demos that were going on. The Ascendo had the, I think it was their new 264-inch infrasonic subwoofers in that room, along with like a dozen other speakers and all that. So to me, that was one of the bigger things that I spent time with at the show, was just the demos and the AV. And I'll include the LED walls within that. That's been a growing category. And, seeing that again at booths like Kaleidoscape, it's the technology is becoming more remarkable every day.
Just like we said at the top, this year we passed 500 episodes of ResiWeek. But I mean, I couldn't really use episode 500 in this best of, because that was us looking back at ResiWeek. And right now we're looking back at ResiWeek. It would be very confusing. Let's avoid that. A little too meta for me. Instead, we're going, just to jump ahead, 501, where we talk to Ian Bryant and Jason Griffin about crafting the perfect AV pitch.
We've all seen
No, it's not.
what we used to call them, the trunk slammers, right? The people selling speakers in the back of the truck on the side of the road. Like, I mean, there's always going to be integrators. There's always going to be, well, in your case, contractors. Anyone in any trade is going to have a small percentage of people doing bad work. And, if you've got someone that's got really good sales tactics and really good marketing, they can put up a good front and do some bad work. It's pretty much every trade. Unfortunately, it seems that in our industry, the bad ones leave a really, really bad taste in the mouth of the customer. It feels that it's more than just getting some bad cabinets or some it's so much more personal, and it takes another integrator to get that trust back. It's a lot harder, it seems, in our industry from what I've noticed. But I don't know. I think that's just going to be in any trade. But one of the things that I was thinking of when I read this article that Kat wrote, which was very great, very well written, it did remind me of something that I refer to a lot because I think it stands out, that the CEDIA Technology Advisory Council, a couple of years ago, did that Integrator 2027 white paper, and it was more about talking about how you're improving the life of your customer and their home, and by not just selling black boxes and big TVs, but we're actually trying to improve someone's lifestyle inside of their living condition in their quarters. And I think that elevator pitch, talking about that kind of focusing on improvement and focusing on the personal side of it, and along with going into client discoveries that also focus on that, really can weave a really amazing storyline that an integrator is able to tell that most trades are not able to do. So I really liked how she gave examples, and it was very focused around the person and the people and their home and their experience. And so I think that you could, bring that across the entire process of your work and your business. So it's like you said, we the elevator pitch in our industry has been up for discussion for so long, because how do you get the point across? And then, as Kat mentioned, depending on who you're talking to, there's 20 different ways of presenting it, because everyone has a different view of what our industry is. But I think that it's extremely important, and I definitely, as both of you said, recommend going and reading it. And one of the things that she put in there was making sure that everyone in your company is on the same page with that elevator pitch and how it reflects in your business. And I think that was a really good one. So it's not just the sales team using the pitch. The technicians, when they're talking to the customers on the site, get it as well, and they kind of spread the same message. And it's a very important process.
I think this is a valuable conversation. I sometimes worry that what gets missed in this conversation is that the elevator pitch is really just one small component of a much larger, and Ian kind of alluded to this, a much larger sort of narrative that you really need to have dialed as a company. And I can share that at One Vision, we've had various iterations on this, but just recently, within the last probably 6 to 9 months, we went through the exercise of let's revise our brand messaging guidelines, right? And so there are a million different templates for this. If you're an AI user, you can go to ChatGPT or any Gemini or any of these other AI platforms and ask for a framework around this. But it's basics like what's our positioning statement? What are our core value propositions? Who's our ideal customer profile? Why are we different? What makes us different than our competition? And there's no need to complicate this. You can come up with a very simple framework, but the process of going through and getting that written is enormously clarifying. And then at the end of that process, you have this fantastic written document that, I feel like I've mentioned now AI several times, but just to go back there one more time, what we did then is we were able to take that brand messaging document, feed that as context to a custom GPT in our Chat GPT account. And now it's a fantastic resource for, hey, we need to, write a quick email or newsletter summarizing this new feature, use our brand messaging guidelines. And now it knows, all of the core things that we want to emphasize in our messaging. And so it's a really, really useful exercise, whether you're going to use AI or not, just to get everybody on the same page. And that would be my one final point on it, is just don't get too myopic on the elevator pitch. Because that is really just one component of a broader messaging strategy that I think is really more important to think about holistically. Again, I think the article is great. I think the elevator pitch is important, but make sure you don't lose sight of the other components that kind of feed into that as well.
And that basically covers 2025 for ResiWeek. Before we go, I want to thank everybody who's either watched the show on YouTube or listened to the show on your streaming platform, watched the very dumb shorts that I do that are the intros for the show, because I have a lot of fun finding clips for those. I want to thank everyone who has been a guest on this show. I'm the one who has to reach out to those people, and the fact that they respond and are very cool people and show up on our show and talk smart so that I don't talk smart like I'm doing right now. Thank you so much for all that. If you want to check out more stuff on the AV side of things, check out our shows like A State of Control, AV Career Mastermind, Women in AV, probably any show that says something AV in it, you'll probably find on AVNation.tv. I'm going to take a page from Tim and say, don't follow me. If you want a copy of a book that I've written, 2 books, in fact, that have nothing to do with AV, then I don't know, email me, message me, something, and I'll send you a PDF file and you can have fun with that. For now, we're closing out the year. We are going to have a lovely chat with some people about 2025 and the year that was and what might show up for the residential side of AV in 2026. But for now, happy holidays, enjoy yourself. And this has been ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is Erin Marmoran of EdTech. The world of higher ed AV is growing rapidly. That's why each month we hear from the best and brightest from colleges and universities all over the U.S. Check out EdTech on avnation.tv or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.